Hello, students. Sorry I'm so late with this. It's been a hectic day today, so I apologize for being late. All right, chapter 31 um, negotiable instruments. Let's talk about the reason for negotiable instruments before we go on. This idea of negotiable instruments started with an idea of how can we make a substitute for money. And so, if you will think of negotiable instruments as exactly that, as being a substitute for money, all these rules and requirements that you'll see will make perfect sense. Um, that I can take my negotiable instrument and I can take that down to anyone, and anyone can give me cash for it. Um, and so that is um, kind of the baseline idea that we have. I want you to think of it in also another way. Let's go back in history about 250 years to say 700 years ago. We had blacksmiths, and at the time, blacksmiths were the people that were kind of in the top end of the professions. And that's because blacksmiths had to have all these materials, had to have iron and gold and silver and copper in order to do their work. And so, because they had this valuable metal that they had to make sure they safeguard, blacksmiths were actually the one that developed locks. And so they would take their materials, their precious metals, put it in locked rooms. Well, the merchants in the area liked this idea of being able to lock up their valuable stuff, and so merchants in the area started by going to the blacksmiths and says, "Hey, can we lock our stuff in with yours?" And so they did that. And so when I go to a merchant, I go to the blacksmith shop, I pick up the appropriate amount of gold for the shopping that I'm going to do. I go to the merchant and give my gold to the merchant, and the merchant turns around and takes now the gold back to the blacksmith. Well, it didn't take long for him to realize that that was kind of silly. Why don't we just do that with a document? So you go into a merchant, and I write on a piece of paper and I say, "Hey, blacksmith, give Red Baron merchant 1 pound of my gold." And I give it to Red Baron merchants, and Red Baron merchants and takes it back to the blacksmith, and the blacksmith then adjusts his records or moves the piles of gold over, moves 1 pound of gold over to merchant's stack of gold. And that's really the idea that we have behind a check. And if you think about it, that's all a check does, is say, "Hey, take $100 out of my account and put it in somebody else's account." Okay? So this idea of being a substitute for cash, a way of extending credit, were important concepts behind negotiable instruments. And negotiable instruments consist of 4 different kinds of negotiable instruments. 4 different kinds of negotiable instruments. Promissory notes and CDs, which are 2-party negotiable instruments, and checks and drafts, which are 3-party negotiable instruments. In other words, a check or a draft involves 3 parties, much like our blacksmith story that I told you. Okay? So a promissory note is negotiable instrument between two parties, a debtor and a creditor. A CD is a negotiable instrument between a bank and a customer. A draft is this three-party party instrument in which one party is directing another party to give a third party some money. And a check is just a draft, but it's a specialized kind of a draft. A check is a draft that's issued by a bank. So the way we tell these apart is, first of all, we identify how many parties are involved. And then we have to establish, then we look for, is this a debtor-creditor relationship? Is this a two-party instrument in which a bank is a party? That would make it a CD. Is this a three-party instrument in which a bank is involved? That would make it a check. Or is this a three-party instrument in which a bank is not involved? That would make it a draft. One other thing, it is possible to have a draft that's issued by a bank because a check has to be payable on demand. If it's not payable on demand, then it's a draft and not a check, even if it's issued by a bank. So checks are drafts issued by banks that are payable on demand. The primary benefit of having a negotiable instrument is that I can get the rights as a holder in due course, and that really, in essence, makes it so that this instrument is the same as cash, and we've got enough time to do chapter 32, and so we'll do chapter 32 and talk about what a holder in due course is. The guts of this chapter is on page 812. These 6 requirements for an instrument to be a negotiable instrument. Okay? And so you see those: be in writing, signed, unconditional promise or order to pay, be payable to order or bearer, be payable on demand or at a definite time, not state any other undertaking or instruction by the person promising or ordering to do any act in addition to the payment of the money. Okay? It has to meet those 6 criteria. If it fails any of those 6, then it's not a negotiable instrument. And as you work on the cases in the back of the chapter, you'll be asked to, first of all, identify, is this a negotiable instrument? If it's not a negotiable instrument, why does it fail being a negotiable instrument? And finally, what type of a negotiable instrument is it? Is it a promissory note, a CD, a draft, or a check? But the most important page in this chapter is page 812 that has those requirements in it. Those subsequent pages then flesh out those rules. And so you need to read those and understand what those rules are, and some areas that seem to be in a gray area, but in which there's actually substantial guidance in terms of understanding. Just one more thing for you to look for. In order for this negotiable instrument to be the same as cash, I have to be able to look at this instrument and assess its value. And if I can't assess its value by looking at the instrument, then it's not the same as cash. And what that means is all the essential terms of that instrument, in order for me to be able to assess its value, has to be on the document itself. What's the interest rate? Has to be on the document. When's it's due? Has to be on the document. What's the principal amount? Has to be on the document. All those things, so that I can assess the value of this instrument. All has to be on the instrument. Okay, I think with that much of an introduction, you can get started on chapter 31. We'll start with the cases then on Friday. No, we won't start with the case on Friday. Yeah, we'll start with the cases on Friday. If I can get the last test in, I'll send you the answer key, and at some point then, probably next Monday, we'll kind of do an online email thing in which all 6 of you can email me with questions about your exam, and we can go over the exam. All right. Have a good day. Be safe. Talk to you on Friday. Thanks. Bye.